Get Out is a 2017 American psychological horror film directed by Jordan Peele that explores the racially motivated anxiety of the African American population in modern day society. The extract from 32 minutes to 37 minutes represents how historical systematic oppression of African Americans continues to steadily suppress their voices in today's society, even in the absence of physical violence. This is done through a progressively wicked narrative structure, the symbol of Missy's teacup, based on scene from the stuck in place, and the interplay between diegetic and non-diegetic sounds. So, at the start of the extract, Missy and Chris were seen exchanging casual remarks about the subject of hypnotism. However, the conversation takes on a more serious tone as Missy begins to progressively ask Chris more and more personal questions um, regarding his life, such as, how did your mother die? The sudden tone shift from a friendly conversation to a one-sided inquisition resembles an interrogation where Missy is forcing information out of Chris. The first instance where Chris's voice is suppressed is when Chris shyly rebels against Missy's uh, request about his mother's death. So here he says, I don't want to think about that. And despite Chris's plea to drop the subject, Missy refuses to acknowledge Chris's deteriorating emotional state and softly stares into Chris's eyes. Um, and Missy's friendly yet unsettling refusal to respect Chris's request to halt the conversation demonstrates how the voices of African Americans are still suppressed without the use of any physical violence. So, following Macy's persistent command for Chris to relive that dreadful day, the camera cuts to the teacup right here. The teacup is a symbol of wealth and power. Wealth, as in the teacup is made of porcelain, and power, as the scraping of the spoon with the teacup overrides the silence of the room, which represents Missy's radiating um no, which represents Missy's radiating aura. The combination of wealth and power that takes the form of the continuous diegetic sound of the spoon scraping the teacup suppresses Chris's protest and forces Chris to subconsciously comply with Missy's depraved commands in her attempt of trapping Chris in the past on an emotional level. Yeah. So, as Chris gives in to the demands of Missy, he's forced to relive the traumatizing memory of the day his mother died. And within the movie, the whereabouts of Chris's father is not known, and Chris's mother is implied to have died in a hit or run. These circumstances are widely present in ghetto areas that exist as a result of the historical systematic oppression of African Americans, and therefore Chris's unfortunate upbringing, the young Chris at the time is forced to take on the responsibility of looking for his mother when she did not come home safely. This allows Missy to guilt trip Chris for not looking for his mother, despite Chris being no more than a kid. So therefore, although Chris currently lives in a well-decorated and secure apartment, as shown in the beginning of the movie, his past, which is tainted by these historical system, which is tainted by historical systematic oppression, still haunts him to the present day, which serves as a hidden blade of guilt that can be turned upon him to dehumanize him and ultimately silence his voice. So, with an increasingly heavy heart and at a loss for words, Chris's voice is completely extinguished as his body enters the sunken place at Missy's command despite his desperate pleas. So here she's guilt tripping Chris, and then she commands Chris to sink into the floor, and here he sinks right here. So at 35 31, which is right now, this mise en scene explores the mental entrapment that the African Americans still face in today's society. This form of non-physical oppression is presented in this scene through the narrowing perspective towards Missy at the focal point of the scene. And then we also have the body positions and the surroundings of Missy and Chris, and the lighting that barely illuminates the floating body of Chris. So within this scene, the gradually falling body of Chris is positioned in a way that um, places Missy as the focal point. This perspective highlights Missy's presence, which subtly portrays her as a superior being that dictates the fate of Chris, and which Chris here is a synecdoche of African American. Moreover, the contrasting surroundings and body positions of Missy and Chris also highlights the drastic difference within the power dynamic between them. So here, Missy is sitting in a comfortable cross-legged position while leaning back in her chair within a warmly lit, luxurious living room. However, Chris here is suspended in midair with his arms and legs all spread out helplessly with nothing but darkness surrounding him. These extreme differences between Missy and Chris further suggest the helplessness of the 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 African American population as they are robbed of their voice and left in a perpetual state of helpless struggle. So lastly, the cold beam of light that barely illuminates the Chris is projected from the position of Missy, as you see here, and this is the sole source of light that shines on Chris within the void around. So therefore, this light is metaphorical to Chris's hope of somewhat um, of no, I can't say that word. Wait a sec. Um, so this light is metaphorical to Chris's hope of escaping the sunken place, and the direction of the light being shown from Missy to Chris implies that the only way for Chris to escape the sunken place is if Missy wills it. And additionally, the light only partly illuminates Chris, which degrades Chris down to a silhouette. That subtle dehumanization of Chris further conveys the notion that the African Americans are still being suppressed in today's society. Now, the non-diegetic the eerie ambience between 36, 35. So we can skip here from 36, yeah, 36, 35 to through 36, 39, as you can hear here. Oh, I need to turn on the volume real quick. Let me turn it back to here.
Sunken place.
Yeah, starting from here. So the sound here resembles the sound within deep waters, and this non-diegetic um eerie um ambience in deep waters distorts and muffles the diegetic screams of Chris. So this presents the suppression of the voices of African Americans as like how the continuous scraping of the spoon with the teacup nullifies Chris's resistance to relive the day his mother died, losing control over not just their surroundings but also themselves.